Today, it's my pleasure to introduce a leader in the Los Angeles community who is dedicated to social justice and civic engagement. Dr. Herscher serves not only as executive director of the Skirball Cultural Center, which he founded, but also as a professor of American Jewish history at our neighboring institution of higher education, Hebrew Union College, and he is an ordained rabbi. His family immigrated from Germany as Jewish refugees in the 1930s to what was then British Palestine. He was born in Tel Aviv and grew up under the tense period that saw the end of the Mandate and the beginning of the idealism that fueled the state of Israel. Coming to the United States in the 1950s, his family settled in San Jose, California, where they were welcomed and where they thrived. He earned his bachelor's degree in history and sociology, for which I've already commended him because I did the same thing. But he got his from UC Berkeley, I did not. And he then subsequently received his doctorate in American Jewish history from Hebrew Union College in 1973. In the early 1970s, he was National Dean of Admissions of Hebrew Union College, and then in 1975 he was appointed Executive Vice President and Dean of Faculty for the four-campus college. He held that position until 1995. Believe me, that's a long time to be a dean. As founding president and CEO of the Skirball Cultural Center, Dr. Herscher began work on the conceptual blueprint for Skirball in the early 1980s. His goal was to establish a Jewish institution in the American context that would be inspired by the parallels between Jewish values and American democratic principles. Since then, he has led the way in establishing the Skirball as a preeminent community gathering place that features world-class programming and provides the opportunity for people to make meaningful connections across generations, communities, histories, ideas, and forms of creative expression. The School of Social Work is truly honored also to have a part of our program offered at the Skirball, where all of our students have been offered their education in such exceptional surroundings. Dr. Herscher is the author of several books on Jewish immigration to the United States and the sociology of American Jewish life. His articles and reviews have appeared in more than 30 academic journals. He holds honorary degrees from the University of Southern California and American Jewish University, and he recently completed his 5-year term as a commissioner on the Los Angeles City Ethics Commission. At this time, I'd like to read a message from President of USC, CL Max Nikias. President Nikias has written, "We are now privileged to have the opportunity to recognize Dr. Herscher for his devotion to building a better society through educational and cultural programs committed to raising awareness about ethnic and cultural diversity and promoting tolerance and community. Dr. Herscher has been an invaluable advisor to 3 different USC presidents. He was instrumental in forging the strong academic relationship between Hebrew Union College and USC, a partnership that is unique, truly it's unique, in higher education. At a personal level, the President writes, I have benefited immensely from his wisdom and his friendship. The entire Trojan family joins with our School of Social Work in honoring Dr. Herscher today for his impact on our community and our world.
So I'm going to share with you welfare through my lenses. I'd like to begin, and then I'll go back. I'd like to begin with the age of 18. I am graduating from high school. My father, a cabinet maker, my mother, a laundress. And the gift given to me at the age of 18 after the graduation from Lincoln High School at the Rose Garden was my father, with tears, giving me about 20 to 30 letters with a rubber band around them. And he said, this is your legacy. They were letters written in Yiddish, Eastern European Jewish lingo primarily. And he said, and what I've done, Uri, I have, or son, whatever he called me, I've translated them from Yiddish to German, and now it's your turn to translate them from German to English. And that's what I did. And I did it with a lot of tears. It was a view of social welfare. I'll mention two letters, one from my paternal grandmother, one from my maternal grandmother. My maternal grandmother, when she does receive a visa to go to mandate Palestine, writes my father and says, you know, I've just taken in a child born out of wedlock, and I will not leave without the child. They both meet their demise in Auschwitz. Welfare? Had she thought of herself alone, she would have left the child, but there was no such thing. Same train, the letters are there, and this child, Maxie, and my mother are on their way to the death camp. You cannot put that letter away. That letter becomes part of who you are, and it says you come from a stock where a grandmother would not neglect a child she took in, and she will not go to what would have been her life and freedom without the child. Definition of hunger comes from another letter, namely my paternal grandmother, who exchanges letters with my father, and when my father said, dear mother, are you hungry? She's still in Cologne, and she's on her way to Antwerpen, from there to Auschwitz. And you know what she writes? Dear son, I'm not hungry, but let me tell you, the day that I would feel that I'm hungry, and that's the day when somebody comes to my door and asks for food, and I don't have enough to share. Welfare? Amazing. Two letters. Now let's go back. Two letters at 18, which I want to assure you are anchors to the Skirball Cultural Center today. And they give me enormous strength, and if you ever come to my office, you will see the letters. And I face them every single day. And if there's a nasty caller, I just look at the letter. I said, you know what, this conversation has come to an end, and I hang up. It's as simple as that. When you have this sort of anchor and that sort of an example, You ain't going to feel sorry for yourself, and your feelings are not quickly to get hurt. They're not going to get hurt. Going back, I was raised in Israel, Mandate, Palestine, by two uncles, both who had created the kibbutz system, another welfare system. And I am proud to say to you that even when the CIA came to see me before I entered the armed forces, I never went, but I went through all. The CIA came to see me, just to show you how great they were already in 1960. They said, Uri Herscher, are you a communist? And I said, I don't know. I'm a student at Berkeley, and maybe that's enough. And they said, look, do you have uncles who live in Kibbutz Kfar Masarik and Kibbutz Beit Zera? I said, yeah, they're the greatest. So how influenced were you by them? And I said, totally. Totally. And they said, but you know they were communists. I said, they were the best. Absolutely the best. They had an ideology. You're thinking of political communism, and they only knew economic communism. Big difference. And I grew up under their wings. And basically, as children on a kibbutz, we all clothed ourselves the same way. At the end of the day, you'd bring in your dirty clothes. The next, you'd get new clothes, and you would eat communally, just the way we are, and you would have conversations. And what were the conversations about? How to make the world better. How to make the world better. So you put in your time working. Incidentally, if you're an engineer, you also wash dishes, because an ism is a doctrine. And if you're a true believer to it, and I love to sit next to people who are true believers in welfare. Whoa! What better company can you have? You can't have any better company. They all want civility. They're all dreaming of utopias that at the end don't work out. But it ain't boring. It's just not boring. And my uncles weren't boring. And they would not get into me. They would just say, you know, Uri, this is what you must do, and this is what you must do all the way. And if I disagreed with them, the answer is you cannot disagree with us. Okay. I miss them. I miss my grandparents. I miss my uncles very much, because I knew they had a purpose and they had a goal. And without purpose and without goal, for me, life is meaningless. Just meaningless. Let me tell you, so that's how I grew up. And that's how I arrived with the best transition America could have offered me. San Jose, California, agrarian city, the fruit capital of the world. That's when I arrived to San Jose. There were no distinctions among tract homes. You could drive around San Jose and you could not find a mansion. So you had a real middle class. You didn't have the poor, you didn't have the rich. The house cost $9,350. Within 5 years of immigration, my parents owned a house. Try that today, 5 years after immigration. So my feeling about the United States and its potential was based on that particular experience. Try being the only Jewish kid in a high school. Try being the only Jewish kid in a high school where 60% came from Central and Latin America. Try teachers who try to get rid of my accent, and they would do it after school, and they would basically say, okay, Uri, here are the problems with vowels in the Hebrew language, and you're never going to lose your accent if you don't follow me in the following kind of poem he created, because remember, it was a cannery city. So he said, okay, Uri, repeat after me. A canner, exceedingly canny, one morning said to his granny, a canner can anything he can, but a canner cannot can a can he? Now, I bring this to laughter, but I must tell you what it did for me. In my view of the goodness of people and trying to let an immigrant know that you've come to a country where you do have a chance. And when I naturalized, a judge called me and says, come on, I want to talk to you for a minute. Do you want to change your name? And I said, to what? He said, well, your middle name is David. Your first name is Uri, but everyone will call you Uri. And Uri is close to urine. And the nicest person in the world to be sensitive to me. And I said to him, you know, Mr. Judge, you are wonderful, and I'm very glad to have met you, but my parents named me Uri, and I will stick to that name. And he said, good for you. Okay. Now, on to Berkeley. And the most important, I think, story before I go Hebrew Union College and then the Skirball. I arrived in Berkeley. Thank goodness they had co-ops. Again, I went back to the kibbutz, except this was Berkeley. Okay? You would earn your money by washing your sheets, by serving dinner, by... I mean, I am the best wiper of utensils in this room. And without a washing machine. I mean, if you want to wait later, you want to ask me how to do it, I'll tell you. Where we can take forks and knives and whoa, we'll dry them just like that for you. One afternoon in my freshman year, I was reading the California Daily. I was waiting for a 6 o'clock class, and it said, there is a meeting at the Student Union of a bunch of folks who want to create a camp for underprivileged children from the Oakland area. I said, you know, I've got an hour. Why not? Now, I'm telling you, I went to that meeting because of my uncles. I went to that meeting because there was something in me that said, underprivileged, people who want an experience, and by walking, I've never been to camp incidentally, but by walking out, and this is a warning, you've all had it in your lives, went to the bathroom, came back, and I was the director of Cal Camp. We founded it, and the question was by the social worker who said, you know, Uri, we can't send 200 kids to camp into the mountains. They don't have pants warm enough. So I said, is that my job? She said, you make it your job. I said, what do I do? She says, there is a company. It's called Levi Strauss and Company. It's on 92nd, it's 92 Battery Street. Here's the phone number, you call them. I called. There's a lot of strength in naivete, or stupidity, whichever you want to. And I called, and it was late in the afternoon, and somebody answered, with whom would you like to speak? I said, I'd like to speak to the CEO of the company. And because I'd read the summer before, I read a novel about a CEO and how powerful. And then, so you read it, you call. Okay, the secretary, Rita Guiney, just died last month at the age of 95, said to me, "Who are you?" The answer was, in a sense, I said, "My name is Uri Herscher," but it wasn't Uri Herscher. I am my grandmother's grandchild. I am my uncle's nephew. That's who I am. But obviously, that wouldn't have mattered. And I said, "I'm a freshman at Berkeley. What do you need?" "I need 200 pairs of pants, socks, shirts," and I just went through the whole thing. "And you called the CEO's office? We have a community office." I said, don't switch me. Don't switch me to another person. I read about the CEO. Don't, please. Rita just cracked up. And she said, "Walter Haas is not in a good mood." And I said, "That's not my problem." She put him through and she said, "I may get fired." I said, "You won't be fired." Puts it through, "Hello, who is this?" And I said, "My name is Uri Herscher. You'll never get to know me. I'll never get to know you. The only purpose of this call is to get 200 pairs of pants, shirts." At the time, they did belts. He said, "You're joking." He says, "Mrs. Haas is in my office, and we're about to go to a party." I said, "Well, I hope you enjoy the party. But please, before you go to the party, you need to say yes." He said, "You know, you really are a stupid freshman. But I'm not easily humiliated. You're a stupid freshman. You need 800 pairs of pants because obviously they're not going to be the same size. And if you want to return some of them, you'll return some of them." Said, "Mr. Haas, I now understand why you're the chairman of the board, and I am a stupid freshman." And that's it. He said, "But I want to come and see you. I come and see me. You'll have to pick up the pants." To move forward very quickly, he says, "I have a son at Berkeley. His name is Bob Haas. And see if you can call him. Maybe he'll be interested in the camp." I said, "Is this a conditional gift?" He said, No, you're getting your pants. I just want to know if..." So I met Bob. That was 50 years ago. There has not been a week in 50 years where Bob and I have not had a 2-hour conversation each week. From doing a good deed came $140 million that has been the support of the San Francisco Levi Strauss extended family to the Skirball Cultural Center. Welfare, doing good, giving you a perspective and a memory. The next chapter was Hebrew Union College. As I said at the table a few minutes ago, by going to the Hebrew Union College, the vertical of history took place. I began to understand that my uncles were not born without knowledge, and that all of a sudden I understood that we are the inheritors of a tradition whose central core is the welfare of community. I got a sense of history. It made me stronger. It made me so much stronger. I understood that Abraham's first act is to welcome the stranger. How magnificent it is when God says to him, "You don't have to rise for prayer because you're not feeling well. and he rises to welcome the stranger. So commentators say that is for the Jew, it is more important to rise to welcome the stranger than to rise for prayer. I have lived that philosophy. Whatever one thinks of God, I know for sure of one thing. He, she, whatever, needs good partners. Just like the bread that you have on your table needed good partners. And partners that believe, as we all do, in the importance of social welfare. So I thank Hebrew Union College. I cannot begin to thank Hebrew Union College. And I'm so thrilled for the relationship with USC. And I'm so thrilled that there's a Skirball that is the West Side venue of what could become a great association. And I'm pleased with the relationships I've had with Max and Steve and predecessors. The reason I've had any strength in giving advice goes right back to a core belief that we are in search of a civil society. And so my book, appropriately, is entitled In Search of Utopias. And I know all of the traps of utopia, but I think we still need to think of a utopia and just figure out a way in which to create it. And that's social welfare. Skirball Cultural Center. The Skirball Cultural Center was meant to be a culmination of what I learned at Hebrew Union College and, frankly, what I learned from my family. Jewish life did not begin with the Holocaust. It did not begin with the State of Israel. It began with core social welfare values that are 3,500 years old. So I've said this before, I'll say it again. I am 70 years old. I'm also 3,500 years old. And I do look great for being 3,500 years old. But I am 3,500 years old, so that when I come to confer with you and to share my thoughts of social welfare, I am easily 3,500 years old, with a rich tradition where the core is community and the memory of community. The Skirball Cultural Center today is a cultural village of civility. There are 200 of us who work there. We have 650,000 visitors, 200,000 children who had no clue what a clean bathroom looks like, who had no clue of immigration history, social history, no clue of world music beyond California. They come and they bring their parents, and we give them what I hope is the biggest hug and welcome anywhere to be found. So I would say we were born a hugging people, an embracive people, but, and here is the but, that relates to you, to USC, to other institutions. No one can do it alone. No one can do it alone. My hope is that as you record history and as you attempt to apply it, that we become collaborators. We cannot do it alone. USC and Skirball are tied in collaboration for a purpose. For a purpose. And as long as we keep on the mission, we at the Skirball take a 3,500-year history and we intersect it with American democratic ideals. I honor, and then we're open for 10 minutes of questions, I stand here and my grandmothers are really vivid in my mind. Their courage, their belief that human beings are hopeful. My uncles, at the moment, I've left my grandmother's and I've been transported to Kfar Masaryk, and my uncle is saying to me, communism is the answer. The other uncle says, I think maybe it's socialism. The Hebrew Union College says, let's evaluate how best we can reach the goals that we have in tradition and apply them to our students. And here I am with you, the recorders of memory, joined in with yet another record. And I am an optimist. I think as long as we bring to history a sense of perspective, that we were not born yesterday, but aren't we lucky that others were, and we were mentored by them, and here we are, who we are today. Thank you. My uncles are wondering what applause they just heard. Any questions? I think the first major contribution is that we have created a Jewish entity, a Jewish umbrella that is not just for Jews. It's really crucial. Synagogues are for Jews. You know, a Catholic church is for Catholics. We are a cultural center that pursues the Jewish values and applies it to the community, which means there are no strangers among us in this community, and everyone is welcome at the Skirball. And they're welcome to feel good. We are a people of immigration. Skirball celebrates immigration. Skirball is offended by those who are not free. Skirball is offended if there's any abusive behavior that takes place. It has attempted to create a civil community which is an example to community. We are totally politically connected. We know who's on city council. We know who's on the county. They've all been there. They all say, this is a model that we might try to replicate. After all, the Skirball is just a small corner of the world. The question is, can we expand upon it? We are building, after having built, although I call it a little village, we have 600,000 square feet under roof. If you haven't been there, let me tell you, you haven't lived. You got to come. It's a beautiful aesthetic oasis with the diversity of this city working there. And so it is a contribution in that it's also, look, we have perceptions of who Jews are, we have perceptions of who Koreans are, we have perception of who Chinese are, who are Mexicans. We have all these perceptions. We never talk. So I would say it's a place of gathering and it's safe. I think to create a safe place for people to gather is a huge contribution by itself. So I'm very happy about it. I'd like to think about it as my San Jose experience. I arrived in San Jose. I was the only Jew in school. Wow. What a wonderful embrace. What a wonderful hug. It made me. Immigrants are insecure. They're vulnerable. Skirball makes sure that those who arrive do not remain vulnerable after the experience. So that's what I think we've been trying to do. Please. Sure. I think it plays out very directly. We had some commissioners who were quite harsh. So no matter whoever came before them, they were harsh. I'm not harsh. I remember a wonderful Talmudic saying, the shy student does not learn from a harsh teacher. So if you really wish to teach something or learn something, first of all, there is an ear. Not everybody who came before the Ethics Commission had committed a huge crime. We're human. Try to remember that I'm human. I try to remember that Uri also walked. We all walked edges, and some of us fell in one direction, some in the others. I think that what I learned in my upbringing was none of us have a monopoly on knowledge or judgment. I brought that to the City Ethics Commission, and aside from needing to get up early and get there on time downtown, I really did enjoy it. And the other thing I did, which was really important, I listened to the staff. They're the ones who were preparing the cases. And I listened really carefully to them. So most of City Council has marched before me because of an ethics violation. It's usually somebody sent me two $100 bills from the same checkbook. None of us was, I've never really had to meet with somebody that I called a criminal. And whatever the consequences were, I tried to make them fair to what had happened. So I think it's, totally connected of who I am. I think that there's probably some contemplation. I think there is an attempt to do something like this in Philadelphia. But there is no replication because of one aspect. None of them go into 3,500 years. It's very important for me to say to all of you in this room, the Cultural Center began, if you were to ask me, what would you call it? The first thing that you called it, I called it a Thank You America Cultural Center. I think one of the things that this Cultural Center does, that we don't do too often as institutions, is to thank America. I wouldn't be here. Guess none of you would be here. If at some point some courageous relative, through harsh means, some people went through denigration, degradation, all of which I absolutely hate. Somehow, between 1880 and 1920, 30 million immigrants came to this country. It was the largest movement of human cargo in the history of this country. Among them were 2.5 million Jews of the 30 million. These people basically came here as shareholders of this nation. For some, it took a long time to be shareholders. For many, it was immediate. The reason I have optimism for welfare and I have some optimism for the future, let that not be forgotten. We are shareholders. We all get one vote, but we share in the destiny of a country. And I'm being, on purpose, Pollyannish. I really believe in it. And if every immigrant came here and said, here is how I would like to add to the welfare of the state of California, and this is what I bring with me from my background that I think will add to the welfare of California, I'm counting on that. It's going to be a much better state. Without immigration, this country cannot renew itself. I'm totally dependent on the younger Uris and the younger folks who came here to add to this experience by the experience that they brought with them. And so the key word, I think, is welcoming the stranger, which is in the biblical text as the first act of a Father Abraham that is shared at least by three faiths.